It's Finch Fulton. He's vice president of policy and strategy of Locomation. This is a man concerned about safety and making sure autonomous vehicles are launched the right way. And due to that, I think you've just been named to the PAVE board. So speaking of cowbells, let me give you a couple of those. Fulton, thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks, happy to be here.
Awesome stuff. Hey, tell
So
us about.
I did.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, man.
Well, look, I'm from Alabama, so yours the cowbell worries me. We play Mississippi State this weekend. But so in this last week, I did just join the Partnership for Automated Vehicle Education Board. And the point of this group is that you got to get the key messaging. People need to understand what is real and what is marketing with automated vehicles. You got to help people understand the actual capabilities and the actual limitations of where AVs are today. And what we see is companies that promote themselves as full self-driving now that aren't are hurting everybody, and they're putting people at risk because people over rely on these systems that aren't intended to do the driving themselves. So it's all about helping the public understand and helping the regulators understand what is going on in reality with automated vehicles. And what we see is people don't trust what they haven't seen or experienced. Skepticism comes from this lack of knowledge and exposure. Most people haven't seen an AV, but the people that have had a chance to interact with actual AVs, in Pittsburgh, for example, where you can see them all over the place, they have a much higher opinion of them. They understand them better. So what we got to do is we got to make sure people can interact with these vehicles, see demonstrations, and even ride in an AV so that they can feel more comfortable and understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, Finch, it's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that because a big storyline that was going on over the past couple of weeks was the Tesla FSD, right? People like going on
Yeah.
YouTube and almost gamifying to your own driver base as these sort of beta testers on roads, and I think it creates a
Yeah.
pretty huge safety concern. Are
Yeah.
situations like that a negative for the industry, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, it makes everybody feel more concerned about what the technology is. And I should clarify that those Tesla users doing that are just engaging in illegal activity and posting it online.
Mm.
So that's already illegal. They can't do that. But if you talk about the way people see these, their perceptions impacted by companies like that doing that. 53% of people feel less safe sharing the road with the self-driving semi truck. Only 11% feel safer right now, which is concerning. But what we also know is a different study shows that 60% of people are worried about sharing the road with trucks today, conventionally driven trucks. So people are afraid of trucks. You can make the argument that people are more afraid of trucks than they are self-driving trucks. It just depends on how you ask them. But people are more afraid of trucks because of their size and having to share the road with them than they are of the technology. And anecdotally, people feel more comfortable driving near an automated driving system or an automated vehicle than they do near a teenager, somebody very clearly texting, or like a very senior citizen. I mean, it's not hard to think about the people you've seen on the roads that you would rather that person be replaced with an automated vehicle.
Yeah, well, Finch, I would argue that there's a healthy amount of fear that needs to be there, right? Because then you don't
Yeah.
gamify things like they're doing with that Tesla stuff. But I also get what you guys are doing. They're trying to kill that hype and create good expectations because Duna and I are still upset we don't have flying cars yet because that's
Mm.
what we were sold when we were kids, right?
They're
Uh,
coming.
Yeah, well, I hope they do because I'll be buying one. That'd be very cool. So, how are you guys doing stripping down this hype, but also maintaining the fact that this is a good thing moving forward, right? So you got to strip down some of that craziness that people
Yeah.
think is going to actually happen, but then also promote the fact that this is a really good thing moving forward and it brings some really exciting things to the future, right? How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, so people don't generally think about or realize how dangerous the roadways are. There's nearly 40,000 fatalities every year on American roads, and humans are the critical factor, the critical reason behind 94% of them. If you ask people how safe an AV should be, they generally want to baseline it against humans, but they generally think humans are 85% more safe than they actually are in reality. So that's of concern. It's hard to have a baseline for how safe these vehicles need to be if people just assume humans are a lot safer than they are. But if we think about trucking, being a truck driver is the fourth most dangerous job in the US. Every year, there's about 110,000 crashes where you have to have a car towed away, 60,000 large truck crashes that cause an injury, and 5,000 fatalities, or 5,000 trucks involved in a fatal crash. So obviously, when a truck gets into a crash, typically it's the other people that die, but still 850 of these fatalities are the truck drivers themselves. And what we see is those numbers are only increasing with everything going on with COVID and the roadways and everything. So if you look at these crashes and if you look at the truck drivers that are dying out there, three-fourths of these fatal truck crashes are caused by the other people on the roads, the other vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
people in the roads, animals in the roads, deer, or things falling off another vehicle. Only the final fourth do you see can you start equating that to the trucker's action. And that makes sense because these are trained professionals that do this for a living and safety is their life. But in cases where the truck driver's the critical factor, it's speeding, it's lack of sleep, it's inattentiveness or aggressive driving. So when you start looking at these automated vehicle technologies, first, the best thing for a truck driver would be to automate the other vehicles on the road. But as you start bringing in these safety technologies into trucking, and if you have a human centric approach like we do, it looks like studies have shown that you can get a 32% reduction in these truck crashes by automating the truck itself, and that equates to real lives saved. And I think if you can get that comfort, if people understand the baseline for how dangerous it is out there and what actually causes those crashes, they can understand that these technologies, even if they address speeding, even if they remove the incentives to speed, even if they help drivers get more sleep, all of which Locomation does with its two truck link convoys, you can increase safety while keeping the human in the loop to manage some of these things that these edge case situations where you know machines don't know how to handle. Machines are very good at paying attention to a roadway for hours and hours at a time. They're not necessarily good at managing situations they've never seen before. That's where humans really
Mm.
are excel, managing situations that they've never seen before and using context to figure it out.
Well,
So
Finch,
this is why I think an evolutionary approach that keep the drivers at the center really is going to be the stepping stone to improving safety for all on the roadways.
So, Finch, let me ask you this then. Those drivers, so I know a lot of drivers. There's actually a driver coming on next, and they look at these things with, at the lower end, a healthy bit of skepticism. On the more average end, a lot of skepticism because they see it as like these are going to take our jobs. They're going to reduce rates. They're going to
Yeah.
change the capacity and the dynamics of the market. But you still rely on them to be safety drivers and all that. So, how do you get buy in from a driver when they see this as a threat?
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. One, they need to be able to experience and engage with the technology so they can understand how it improves their safety. Two, if you look at the way the dynamics of the trucking sector are impacted, no truck driver that's driving today should worry about losing their jobs.
Yeah.
And the truck drivers of tomorrow will have a different sort of market they can engage in. And as you know, the average truck driver is 48. They choose truck driving as a second occupation, generally speaking. And so when you're talking about tomorrow's truck drivers, they will have a different market that they can choose to be trained for, bring in, be trained for some of these premium jobs where you can have these trucks that generate twice the revenue and they can take advantage of this technology, whether it's a human centric approach or not. We know that the machines are not capable of doing all the things a human can do. We can work with truck drivers so that this technology can work for them, not instead of them.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, excellent, excellent stuff. I mean, so what do you say to the timeline of what's going on here? Because some of the argument against the drivers that are scared about this or fearful for their jobs is that we were short of drivers. This isn't going to fix the driver shortage in any near term, correct?
Not in the near term. Even if everyone was ready to produce all the self-driving trucks that were solo driverless with no drivers in there, it would still take 9 years for the entire fleet to turn over.
Mm.
And that technology is not ready yet. Most companies are looking at production value in numbers around 2027, where you're going to hit it up to where you have numbers that actually start to impact it. And even then, most of the trucking companies have indicated they wouldn't be ready. So you're going to see this becoming a rolling effect where as more and more companies get experience with it, show the benefits of it, and prove the value, that's when you'll start seeing those numbers pick up. And that kicks that number out many years. And so truck drivers should understand that this is going to be a long slope. They'll be able to work with this technology. And if they do it right, they can take advantage of it to make their lives better in the process.
Finch, hey, thank you for putting the message out there. One thing I really appreciate about you is when you come on here, you're not like a hype man for the technology. You're being realistic with the hurdles that you have to go through, both with people, both with
Yep.
regulatory, both with the participants and stakeholders in the supply chain, like drivers. So, it seems like automation's coming one way or another, and it seems like it's in good hands with you directing some of it now that you're on that pave board. So, thanks for joining us on the show and giving us a little bit clarity on what direction that this technology is going in.
Yeah, thanks for having me and roll tide.
Man, he had to jump that in right at the end.